is that I want you to be able to look at a two-dimensional photograph and interpret it three-dimensionally. That's the biggest thing that I want going on. So like when I say I want you to make a mini bust, which is what this is going to be, what I'm talking about is making something while you're looking at it, because you're interpreting it with your eyes and making it with your hands. So that's the very most important thing that you can do, is have an image of what you're making. Like I had a crap ton of people making the project last semester that said, oh yeah, I'm making a gorilla, and they didn't have a picture of a gorilla. They were just trying to make it from what they remember about a gorilla. I want you to actually look at an image and interpret it with your eyes and make it with your hands. And it's a little more difficult than you think. So here's how we're basically going to do it. So what I'm going to have you do is get a piece of clay that's about the size or no bigger than a lemon, okay? Because we're going to try to concentrate on the idea that no thickness of any part of this project is going to be wider than the thickness of your thumbnail. So that's like a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 inch thick. But that's a good like rule of thumb, weirdly it's called. But what we're going to do is we're going to get this image, and I just have a picture of myself up on this screen right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to sculpt an actual bust. And a bust is a sculpture of a head or a head, neck, and shoulders. And so what I'm going to have you do probably is just have a neck and also just do the head. So like to do this, what I'm really going to do is I'm going to do some sketching with my hands. So like I'm going to look at the image, and I'm going to look more at the image and try to like feel the things that I'm like looking at with my hands. Okay, so right now all I'm doing is I've just bent this into a shape that has the basic shape of a neck and a head. And that jawline is really too manly. I need to soften it up more because I am a schmoo. So I'm also going to bring forward this like frontal forehead thing, because I've had a sculptor before that came in and did a live demo, and he said, you know, you really have like the head of a dolphin, because you have this like really frontal like thing right here, you know, like they have that, yeah. So that's there. So I'd also be mindful of some of the rules of drawing. Like if you know some rules from your drawing classes, you might know that like the eyes on the head are about halfway through. So don't put the eyes way up on the top, because that's an amateur type of a thing to do. So what I'm going to do is try to remember proportions, and I'm actually going to start to work out some of the topography. That's the first thing. And what I mean by topography is like I'm going to actually make this into sort of a map of what my head is structured like. So like I'm going to give it some squeezes and everything and push some spots in so that I have some hills and I have some valleys of things that are there. So you can see that I pushed in like the basic shapes of like what the head probably looks like. Now some things you're going to have raised surfaces for it, and you're going to have to maybe use some tools sometimes, and like make sure you do this really important thing that you'll have to remember from now until the end of like forever in ceramics. You really have to know this concept, okay? Whenever you attach two pieces of clay, you really have to use this thing called scoring and slipping. And what that basically means is you're opening up the clay of the one surface that you're attaching, and you're putting a little wet clay in there, and then whatever you're gonna stick on there, you're gonna also scratch that up, or at least put some mud on that too. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to try to get two equal sized pieces of clay, because I'm going to actually stick the eyeballs into those openings that I made for you know, the hollows for the head.
Isn't that just wet clay?
That's all slip is, yeah. It's just liquefied clay, and that basically yeah, it does. And the reason why you scratch up the surface of the two pieces of clay that you're putting together is because it opens up the pores of the clay that you're attaching to and the clay that you're attaching to, and it makes the two pieces of clay, once it dries, the wetness in there, once it dries, it makes those two things kind of suction together. So I've worked in the eyeballs right there, and now I've left a lot of things that are unchecked right now. So I don't want you, here's the thing. it takes a lot of patience to get where we're going. Okay, so you're just going to work on some of the things a little at a time. So now I have this sort of like eyeball stuffed into the hollows and a little nose raised area right there, and I also have the roundness of the chin underneath, and it's not too manly like Watson's. It's nice and round like a big fat snowman like my face looks. So I'm also going to work on the planes of the face, so like the mouth is kind of flat here, but then the eyes kind of go back a little bit, and then also when I look at it, I see that, like, see this giant, like I have this huge mass right back here, and that's not part of my head. So like I'm going to just pinch that part off right there, and then I'm going to try to get this welded back together in a way. And this doesn't require any scoring and slipping, but now I got Groot's head. That's so weird. But I've started to at least get a little more of a neck and a back of the head looking thing. And I look really, really like I came from Roswell right now. But once the details start working in there a little bit, then we should be good. So then also another thing that you have to do when you're doing almost anything that you're doing on here, don't do drawings, okay? I don't want you to take a pin tool and make a little drawing of something. You've already had the drawing class, or you're going to take it, but you don't need that right now. What I want you to do right now is make these interpretations for what you see out of clay. Like I want you to draw with pieces of clay, not with taking a pin tool and drawing lines and stuff. Now that doesn't mean that you can't make some incisions or make some, you know, some chops in it. So like I'm gonna put the line for the mouth right here underneath, and I'm gonna force in a little bit so that it has like a line. Now I know it's really basic right now, but this is like a sketch. So now I'm gonna look at, again, I'm gonna look at my image, and I'm gonna try to just do the most rough basic things. You know, I'm gonna take like a little piece like this and make like a little pork chop, and I'm gonna take another piece. You're gonna take another little piece that's about the same size. Yeah, they're pretty close. And all we're gonna do with those, and this makes you discover things a lot about how the head is formed. Like, did you know that where the ears are at goes basically from like the top of the eyebrows down to the bottom of, or like the bottom of the nose or the top of the lips, depending on how long your ears are. But like I'm just gonna put a rough little pork chop on the outside of there, just so I have that plane managed, so it's got something on there. But all the pieces are like, we're doing like some serious Mr. Potato Head work here. Okay, so we're actually adding pieces on, and then after you add the piece on, it's kind of important that you, you know, shift it, make it look like what you see there and what's going on. Now I know that these eyeballs too are like, they need to get kind of pushed around their edge and rounded, and you know, you got to understand that when you put the eyeballs in, it's like we're putting, like building it from the bone forward. So an eyeball is actually just like an actual ball, if you could pull it out of the head. So that's what I built in there. And then I would like, you know, I would like take a little piece of clay, like, you know, just a little piece, and then I would like flap out over the top of it like this to be the eyelid. And then what that does is it builds all these like these levels and all this structure into it, so that you know, you start having something that looks more like this rather than like just the bare eyeball like that. So now I've closed over with some eyelid and some skin, roughing it out, and I also am going to start to put together like a little goatee action on here, so that we got, you know, this bald fat guy with a goatee, because that's what you're looking at. And I'm sticking on there, and I'm always pressing down pieces. That's more than like the skills that you're learning about how to do this. I'm more worried about the how-to. So like when you stick on clay on here, it's really important that you close the surface of it and make it all one piece of clay without losing your definition, but then also pressing it down so there's no air underneath it. Like, you don't want there to be air pockets, because if you have air pockets underneath there, it's going to explode in the kiln. And probably, I'm just going to tell you that if you make a little heavy, I would say it's probably a good idea just to stick a loop tool up in here and just pull some clay out of the center, because it's really, really thick. So this looks like the zombie version of me right now, but that's because I'm condensing what would be about a week's worth of work into like a 5 to 7 minute video. So we're gonna keep building and building on this, but the next project that I'm gonna have you work on after you have finished this particular mandala project is, I really want you to build a little bust. Now, here are the guidelines for making a bust. It must be an actual thing. You cannot make Rick or Morty, okay? You cannot make that dog from, I don't even know what the show is. Nothing like that. We're making an actual thing. Look, if I wanted you to make a cartoon, then I would say I want you to make a small cartoon out of clay. What I want you to do is make a bust right now. Because if I open it up to anything, then anything is what will get made. Okay, so I have to give you specific guidelines. So I would work on, you can work on, a real picture of somebody that you know, or you can do a picture of yourself, but that is going to be the project that you have to do once you've finished the mandala. And then there'll be another project that I make a video for, and we can go on to that later. So it is I know you didn't hear any of that. So it is the head of something real. It is not the head of a cartoon. It is not the head of like something, it's a real actual picture of a person or an animal. Okay? So that is what we'll be working on next.